What's going on, workforce? Brian and Chris here, and be sure to like and subscribe, especially to the 60% of you who've yet to hit that subscribe button. We invite you to join us on our quest for 100,000 subscribers here on Work to Game. Today we're diving into Blizzard Reborn as a question mark and maybe inflection in that sentence. Obviously, if you guys have been following the news, especially as it relates to Blizzard and just this year alone, they went so far, Chris actually quit World of Warcraft, literally, and to highlight how important that is, like, you just have to be hanging out with Chris, because literally, like, that is earth-shattering that happened. But last night, Chris and I ended up just getting into one of our gaming conversations because we saw Diablo delayed. We saw World of Warcraft interviews coming out, and people aren't happy. We also saw Jen leaving, her position as co-lead of Blizzard. So we're going to talk about that today, but there's going to be a thing that I want to save a little bit for everybody who actually enjoys our videos. I'm going to talk about WoW 10.0 versus Final Fantasy 14 7.0 as well. So this is going to be a meaty video. Again, we hope that you enjoy it in these discussions. But Chris, dude, you've been talking about this all day on stream, and we just said, you know what? Let's go ahead and put it up on Work to Game. Where do we start?
I mean, first of all, I will just throw my TLDR out in front. I have not been more positive on Blizzard than today since all that news broke.
Okay.
I have never been happier. So we have the Ian interview up. We can go through that if you'd like. Jen leaving, just to get that out in front, because I think that's a really short and quick topic. She was promoted rapidly in a very high turmoil situation. Mm-hmm. Normally, leadership in a company that size, when you're looking at that level, the number of years experience, the diversity and breadth of experience, what it means to things like shareholders, all the existing infrastructure that's already there. Normally, that's a process that takes months where you're tapping on that person's shoulder in advance. There's all sorts of interviews and vetting, making sure this is good, making sure that person's at a state of life where they can do this, because like literally them leaving can affect the share price. So like there's all this stuff that's being considered. Mm-hmm. And instead, they were tapped almost overnight. And so for her to have gone through what should have been a welcoming committee like JL and Brack got, where it can take months or years publicly and can have a huge runway in front of that, for her to leave on its own does not mean that it was good or bad. If it was a bad fit, she would leave. And if everything was on fire and she said, I can't be a part of that, she would leave. And so her leaving on its own doesn't tell us anything. My understanding is that she's leaving to go take a leadership role in a women in gaming's advocacy group. So it could be that she's like, hey, I thought I could make these changes. And actually, I think I really do want to make these changes. And I found a better opportunity to do that. And in that case, it doesn't reflect badly on Blizzard at all.
Right. The other side of it, she's still technically with the company until like January. So it's like she's just kind of transitioning. The thing that stands out to me is that I would say this is one of them was going to leave. How do you, I was like, it'll be interesting to see how a two co-op leadership structure in a company functions. So there could obviously be something with that. I don't think it's very valuable for us to try to read into that situation, because at the end of the day, what we want as gamers is a better Blizzard, a better company, and whether
better
that's
ADK.
Mike, that's whoever, I think that's good. But maybe this was just something that she was like, you know what, I'm planning on doing this anyway. All of this happened because typically when it comes to hiring that section, like that kind of level of a job, that's a 6 to 12 month turnaround. Like you're in interviews minimum to get into that. Once you start getting into the 6-figure jobs, like there is a onboarding process that companies go through, and the higher up, the longer that can take. So there is a high probability.
Their severance packages are so good.
Oh yeah,
because they know that if they ever let them go, it's going to take them at least a year to find a job.
Exactly. And so, but in the case of Jen, like there is a high probability that this was already on her roadmap. Then all of this stuff just kind of dropped out of the thin air, and then it's just like, hey, this is what we're doing, and then now we're going to go ahead and make this announcement. At the end of the day, we're in a complete rebuilding year to actually, most likely, if you think about it, a 3-year cycle for Blizzard here in this case, and that's kind of where we want to start to explore. Shall I toss up the Ian interview regarding WoW? Do we want to
I think the only thing we didn't mention is that there's also going to be like a player advocacy group from the Blizzard side of things. I've seen that getting memed on pretty hard. And so, like, I don't know if you have any opinions on that, but we can jump into
player advocacy. I think is really important. That's one of the things the industry as a whole lacks. It can be get memed on, but when we talk about advocacy, is that there's strength in actually kind of having a seat. one of the things that gamers constantly feel frustrated by is we don't have a seat at the table. Where when we compare that directly to our experience with Final Fantasy 14 is that within the content creator community, content creators end up representing that. They end up being that advocacy group for generally everybody. That's one of the things we actively strive to do here, and we actively get memed on and hate for, because we will actively represent things that we don't believe in, but a portion of the community does. And we want to say, this is a thought that this part of the community has. And
they're welcome to that portion of their opinion. Even if you and I disagree with it, they're welcome to that portion.
Right. And we want to make sure that anyway, so that I believe in advocacy groups. I think if
you can't win, right?
Right.
So you're either told like, I wish we had a voice. And then they're like, okay, we're going to give you an advocacy group. Well, those don't work. Okay. Well, then what do you want?
Right. And I think, like probably them being better with their own content creators would go a long way, but that's my high level.
Plenty of these groups have failed.
Yeah.
In Blizzard, I think Twitch had one. Plenty of these, sometimes they do turn into just being a fluff piece, and it's just a bunch of people tooting their own horn and nothing ever comes of it as change. But also, you don't get change without these. And so I think like that's a hurry up and wait and see, type thing.
Yeah.
Okay, so I skimmed the beginning of this, and then I looked at the community's response, and I honestly didn't read the rest of this. So there's been a number of changes. I will say the initial response before we get into this is negative, but Ian Hazzikostas interviews typically come across as cold and distant. He comes from being an analytical guild leader of one of the top succeeding guilds. He went on to be promoted throughout Blizzard, became known as a really great raid designer. He has a legal background, I believe. And so ultimately, like, cold and analytical is part of just his personality. And so people seem to resent how he comes across as kind of out of touch, but like that's not unique to this interview. And so every time I hear that feedback, I have to immediately discard that, because even his good interviews, even his interviews when the game's doing well, get that same label. So it's kind of like a boy who cried wolf. Like at this point, you saying like, well, Ian seemed distant in his interview. Okay, well, what did he say? Like that doesn't inform me of anything. I do think he cares for the game, and I think he has a really hard job.
What I just heard in all that, though, is that it sounds like he needs to have somebody handle interviews. He needs to put more. They need to have a different public face.
Somebody needs to be the face.
Yeah, somebody needs to be the face.
He can still be the director.
He can still he can do his analytical. It's the same thing I had in work. Literally, there was a guy. I was like, stop having him talk to customers. Just do not.
Yep.
He is a fantastic
Get better
engineer.
At it, or hire somebody else.
Right.
Yes, I agree.
Just hire somebody else to sit and just put him in the back there, let him do his job, stop dragging him out of the dungeon, and then being mad at him because he can't communicate.
Not to mention, in theory, he has better things to do than answer the same question from 27 different press sites. So like that's why the president has a spokesperson, right? And they stand up there and they say things on their behalf, because in theory they have better things to do.
So the first question, obviously, yes, we can be better at communicating. We can be better at getting feedback, and that's going to be something that's a nothing burger. It's like that's action. Like, show me the action. You can, we're going to get better. It's like, okay. Talking about community requests and maybe stubbornness is something like cross faction rating can be a bit more on the radar, possibly these days. So Hacosta says, I'd like to say a bit more on the radar. Yes. That's one of those areas where a lot of things solve and a lot of things figure out, make it happen. But at the end of the day, if Gina and Thrall are working alongside each other in the raid, why can't Alliance and Horde players? How do you feel about this as a long time, player of World of Warcraft? This seems to be like obviously a big shift. They've teased about it in the past. So this sounds like where they're going.
So as a longtime player, I would be concerned. However, we're asking for a better APK. We're asking, right? We're saying the house is on fire. It's at this point, no bad ideas. And so I don't see this as factions are disappearing. Factions will have no value. I don't see this as that. I see this as, okay, well, in the lore, there would be justification for it to work this way. Obviously, there's justification for leaving it the way it is, because that's why it is this way. At this point, I literally just see that as any open options. Like, the way to get me to reactivate my sub right now, I don't know what it takes me to download the game, is to tell me they're going to spare no expense, no layoffs. They're going to delay 10.0 and give us a 9.3 instead. They're going to sit down and focus on a rebuild. If this is a Realm Reborn, if this is a 2.0 moment, and they say we need to rebuild this from the ground up, there may not be a 10.0. This may be WoW 2, and we just need you to be along for the ride. That's what gets me to reactivate my sub. Not to download the game and not to play it. I won't be a monthly active user, but I would I would support that financially.
So let's hit this question and let's hit that topic, because that's 100. You're 100% and where we're going with this, everyone. So it says talk about 9.2 a bit, but beyond that, should we expect a 2.5 or a 3 expansion this cycle, or will it be 9.2 and then looking towards the next thing? Hazzikostas says we'll be talking a bit more in conclusion to Shadowlands in more detail in the future. So 9.2 is coming. You'll be hearing about it more soon. We have more planned after that, but it's hard to say how much more without almost spoiling some of the story that is yet still to come. We have a lot of details on that soon, but we want to be able to explain it in full context of what 9.2 is going to be. So there's really, in my mind, that's like, okay, 9.2, that's the only bit of information out there. Now let's talk about the concept of, like you said, World of Warcraft Reborn. Let's talk about concept of 10, versus 7. Like when you think about WoW Reborn, like when we think about what 14 had to go through, like that's where, like there were, like Yoshi P said, there's nothing that's sacred. Like what do we need to do? Yep. Let's get this thing rocking and rolling. And Yoshi P drew a lot of inspiration from World of Warcraft. How much of this do you think that is that? How much, like you said, they come out and they announce that you're
9.2 jeopardize. Mm-hmm. We're excited to tell you what 10.0 will be. Yeah. We're going to have a series of time locking events and leverage our past content so that you guys all have something to do. There's going to be a chance to go tie up a bunch of old story threads that over the years have become a kind of thing. We're going to just kind of burn time through these patches like 1.0. We're going to destroy the world, and we're going to relaunch you into a new thing as comparing this to 2.0. Yeah. That's something I could be 100% on board with. I don't know that they're ready to do that. What is interesting about that is that would, to me, send a massive message that Activision Blizzard says we are going to leave it Activision Blizzard, and we are going to give Blizzard the ability to pick themselves up, and that we are going to kind of spare no expense to do that. 2.0 almost bankrupted Square Enix. So it would require Activision taking an enormous leap of faith, and for a publicly traded company that annualizes their franchises, is known for monetizing heavily, and is known for being very well aware of the financial side of the gaming business. It would be a big swing towards kind of caring for the players and caring for the devs to say, take what you need, do what you need, make a good product. Yeah. And I think it would be the Blizzard of old in a new way, right? New leadership, new people, but like that's the mentality that the old Blizzard had that we appreciate. Now, it turns out not everything about the old Blizzard team was perfect. So I don't know that we want to recreate that. Yeah. But we want to create the parts of it that we liked. The parts that we liked were that the content felt passionate, the content felt real, and the content felt in touch with what they wanted to play, what we wanted to play, what they wanted to make. Yeah. And so that would be exciting. Now, comparing it to 7.0, I think is actually not where they're at. 7.0 is a relaunch off of a successful saga ending, right? So 6.0 is going to wrap it up. 6.1 is going to begin something anew, but everything's in a pretty healthy state. Right. Yeah. So you're launching on an adventure. So you get into town and your previous adventure went well. So you're in the parade and everybody's excited and a new threat appears on the horizon and your adventurers suit up. That's not where they're at. Your adventurers are worn, beaten, and tired. You're injured. You don't just get to set out on a new adventure. So I don't think it's 10.0 versus 7.0. I think it's 10.0 versus 2.0. So I think this is a complete structural rebuild.
So, well, outside of that, like in terms of content, I'm also thinking about timing. One of the things with WoW has been that it's like, oh, WoW expansion and the next year 14 expansion now.
Oh God.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. Now you see where I was like, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. But I do want to say,
I'm in.
Oh, right. Well, because that would be for me, like the choice is easy, but that's not going to be an easy choice for a lot of players. In fact, the one-off has always been something nice because it's like, oh, if you want to take a break from 14, oh, guess what? There's also new content over here. And so you'd see a nomadic community kind of bouncing back and forth, one or the other thing. But now Candy Dish here, welcome. Thanks for hanging out. First time in the chat. You are a legend. Says, hey, Brownie Chris, do you think that the whole Realm Reborn route is too on the nose? I'm gonna I don't know why I touched my nose. I just read it and thought it. Copying Square Enix directly, do you think that it's simply sundowning the game and releasing a new Warcraft MMO? So my thought on sundowning.
Realm Reborn copied WoW.
Exactly. So yeah. but here's where I'm going with this, Candy Dish. Here's where I'm going
the black
with
kettle black.
Internet, right? Sundowning the MMO we know doesn't work because there's always going to be somebody who wants to play it, aka Classic, aka Final Fantasy 11 private servers and things like that. There's going to be a community there. So the question is how can you preserve the legacy of investment? Yoshi P even in a recent interview commented like the nightmarish idea of trying to move players from one Final Fantasy MMO 14 into a brand new Final Fantasy MMO, and just how hard that is. You could relate this outside of MMOs to like social, communities, right? Because these games are social, so they're their own social network in a microsystem. Take Ninja moving a Mixer, or like Facebook deals and things like that for exclusivity. Like, hey, we're gonna bring your community over. No, you're not. Like, you're gonna get the people who really care about you, but you're not gonna get the whole enchilada, because people are comfortable. Like, this is where my community is. This is where we meet.
Right.
And this is where we play. And so ultimately, when we talk about a WoW Reborn, a 14 7.0, like, we talk about like a moment in time, kind of milestone, I think, in engineering, where it's like there was this time before this and time after, and the game that can get it to where you preserve the legacy without destroying it and sunsetting it, and then allowing the engineers to build anew. So like destroying WoW would be great. New engine, they can rewrite all the rules, they can redo everything. You could change the combat system from the ground up. You could say, hey, what does WoW look like in 2030? Let's work towards that, and sit here and not have to be hampered by 2004 technology or decisions made in 2008, or et cetera, et cetera. It gives you a lot of freedom and creative, and that's, I think, what we want to see. I think as gamers, we want to see that the community, like, they know what they need to do, but they can't because they're stuck in committee. And anybody knows what the core problem with Anthem is it was stuck in, like, they would just have meetings and nothing could ever get done because no one can make a decision because of some bad leadership. And in this case with WoW, obviously bad leadership was the real critical aspect, and people felt it. You feel it in the game. Where in 14, good leadership, you feel it immediately. So I think, honestly, like, I don't care what they do.
And we're assigning it 2.0. They're not coming out and saying, you know what, we're just going to call Yoshi P and he's going to give us the recipe and we're going to follow it. Like, we're assigning that metaphor because we're Final Fantasy players. Non-Final Fantasy players won't see that pattern. They'll see a different pattern. They'll see, oh, this is anti-Destiny because, like, Destiny did not do this. And it's like, that seems like a good example of what not to do.
That was also Activision driving that, hey, it's got a 2 on it. It's got a 3 on it, because that's how a lot of gamers have been trained. But when you start looking at how, like, Fortnite and all these, like, that's why Overwatch 2 at its core, I think, is fundamentally flawed, because the better thing to do is respect the community as they are and sell them more stuff in which that they are be happy to purchase it. But now you got to go purchase, and you saw them try to say, we're going to keep the community together for this and how yeah. It's like, no, like, respect the community in that regards. So for that though, then from a timing perspective, let's say it isn't even like WoW Reborn, but it's still 10.0. Like, these delays could push 10.0 easily into an on year for 7.0, and that's essentially the thing that I'm looking at and going, I wouldn't at this point. The thing I would say as a Final Fantasy fanboy, that's what I am. You're going to get crushed. And the reason you're going to get crushed is Final Fantasy 14 hasn't played all of its cards yet. And the key aspect is that you're not going to be on console. 14's already has console support. It can always add more console support. You don't support cloud. Well, 14, there's so many inroads that 14 has to continue to broaden its audience and reach more players. And Yoshi P's own statements alone suggest that. Like, hey, guess what? You don't like MMOs? You know what? Don't play this as an MMO. We're going to, he's going to talk to us more about the future in terms of the trust system alone. And you might feel like the trust system negates the MMO, but it could be a gateway drug into getting people to actually play the MMO. And what MMOs thrive off of, despite the hardcore ultimate rating, balanced Discord believing, folks, and I love the balanced Discord, but it's built off of casual players. Casual players make up the bulk majority of funds that keep these games on. And that's one of the reasons why arena shooters versus battle royales are not going to compete. That's why Halo's going to really struggle later this year. And that's why when they introduce their battle royale in 2022, you're going to see a massive amount of excitement around that. Whether they can hold on to it, it's going to be up to them. But you got to sit here and play your strengths. Play to your strengths.
I think that, like, there's nothing he could have said to any of these questions that would have made people happy.
No, not
There's
now.
literally not an answer that he could have given that would have made people go, wow.
Right.
Like, he's a spokesperson in front of a building on fire.
Right.
It's like, so how's your building doing?
It's bad.
Not great. Like, not great.
What Yoshi P did was he slowly restored, like he got the game playable for 1.0. Yep. And then he sat us all down and he laid out his plan. So you got to figure out what your plan is and then present that plan, and maybe have somebody who's charismatic.
Make the game playable. 9.1.5 is adding all the stuff that it has been a step towards all the things that people have asked for. Yes, it would have been better to have those things back when they were asked for in the first place.
Yep.
But step 1 of Yoshi P's 1.0 was get 1.0 playable. And yes, to many of you, it was like, I appreciate this, but this is what I asked for a year ago. Like, but you know what? Better late than never. And so step 1 is get Shadowlands playable. That seems to be the step that they're headed towards. Just get it playable. Get it playable. And be like, well, they should have. Oh, great. We can't go back. So step 1 was get it playable. Step 2 was present a plan. Step 3 was be patient. You guys were asked to wait a long time for 2.0. A long time.
Mm-hmm.
And the game went offline for a time.
Yeah. Well, and that ties right to what
would people say about Blizzard if World of Warcraft went offline for how many months was Final Fantasy offline?
It was like 9, maybe more. If I mean,
I could be misremembering. What happens if WoW is offline for the first 9 months of next year?
Honestly, that could be a real strength because it helps build up. Kind of you miss it.
But people will say
you got classic,
Blizzard
right?
People
you
will
still
say
have
Blizzard
classic,
died.
And that kind of ties what Candy Dish says is like you got classic. You can go play that sub. Listen, and that's what happened. Like the game was offline, and everybody was like, "It's done. It's never coming back."
Yeah.
But that's not what happens. Is that as all of a sudden, as soon as that date started drawing in closer, and as soon as it became live, Yoshi P was blown away by, like, he couldn't even estimate the fact that how many people were excited for that. Going offline could be the best thing for them.
And he had an install base. What was the 1.0? What was the 1.0 player base? 1 million players? 2 million players?
No, maybe like when you go look at the legacy, so like the credits, I think a lot of people did come back as a part of that deal. So maybe 1 million, maybe 2, but most likely active.
WoW has been installed on over 100 million players' computers.
Mm-hmm.
So the relaunch could put New World to shame.
Well, and that's the final thought as we kind of go into it, is that both Final Fantasy and WoW, and no matter what, I'm going to say this and people are going to reject it, but New World is a phenomenal game.
Yeah,
and if they fix it,
we all knew that players were going to fall off. We all knew that the newness was going to wear off, and so then the newness wore off, and people were like, "Oh, it's dead."
Oh no,
it's not dead.
Yeah. They as long as they were able to fix their bugs, like what New World has, is that what you're looking at right now is New World is actually already started the race for next generation level setting technology and graphics. So essentially, the longer that WoW gives New World that bandwidth, the longer that New World has to go and sit here and create established content and community and a content cycle, is just more that WoW is that's them digging. They've been digging their own hole because they sat on their hands. So I'm not necessarily worried about New World competing with Final Fantasy because they're, it's just a different style all around.
It's a different game.
But, and then that's where it comes down to it, is that at some point, New World's going to have 5 years of content. New World's going to have an incredely visual history. And it's.
And we knew it would have problems in the beginning. We just didn't know what the problems would be. So
somebody's like, how much slack are you willing to give New World for all their bugs, Brian? I go, the same amount of slack I gave 14. And I was playing it all, and I didn't stop playing 1.0. So if you're expecting me to be like, oh my God, there's a bug and somebody did something bad and then they got banned for it. Oh no. Like I lived through 1.0. I lived through 1.0.
The bans right now are much more than doing something bad. It could also be you're doing something well. It could be that you're a very good player.
Wow, this player
you are
is incredible.
Slated to be in a PvP match the next day, and the entire opposing guild decided to mass report you, and an auto ban tool goes, well, 40 people can't be lying.
Yeah.
Oops. So yes, it's fun to laugh at that stuff, but you're laughing at like humor of like, I don't know, the Three Stooges, right? Somebody gets hit in the head with a pail. We knew this stuff was coming.
Yeah. I have so much confidence in New World. New World by far is the best MMO to launch in 2021. We'll see if that changes on the 19th. I expect that it will, but New World is the best game that like the best.
It's literally, does Amazon keep funding it? They said they're going to fund it for 5 years.
No,
and
10.
Then see what
they
happens.
said
10. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, let's see. If they really stay funding it, eventually it will establish a community. Now, if that community is big enough to justify the cost, is up to them.
Yeah.
But because Amazon doesn't always run everything at a profit.
Right.
So that's their call. But as long as they leave it online, it will establish a community. As long as they continue to work on this, it'll get better. I'm like, this seems weird, but like New World going through its shed phase and they're like, it lost half its players. Do you know what I heard? It kept half its players.
Yeah.
Like, that shocked me. I thought the fall off would
numbers,
be 70, 80, 90%.
The numbers they kept and are keeping.
So when they said it fell off by 50, I was like,
it actually already hit a bottom, and then over the weekend it grew back.
Good
like,
for them.
Yeah, I was just like, whoa.
I thought it would floor.
I thought it was going to be
80%,
yeah,
90%.
I was thinking 80, 90%, and I'm like, oh, wait,
we're going to shut servers down.
Yeah,
we're going to immediately start emergency merges. But no, 50% is great.
And then quietly, Amazon's hiring 200 people for that game already. Like, they will. Oh, we have a massive hit.
Endwalker will lose a huge percentage of players.
Yeah.
4 weeks in, there will be a huge number of players.
The thing is that people will say is they can't
spin up more servers, and then they'll go, "Oh, the queue times got better. They didn't spin up more servers." Yes, we have less people. Once people get through Endwalker, some percentage of people go, "You know what? I don't want to raid. I don't want to I'm going to take off for a while."
The virtual says, "Isn't it the only MMO to launch in 2021?" Actually, no. If you guys are curious. If you want to get mad at me, if you like Elion and you want to be mad at me, go follow me on my Facebook gaming page, Ginger Prime Gaming on Facebook. I cannot stand Elion. I'm sorry. That's a garbage game. All right, so we've kind of got off the rails here at the end.
What's crazy is a bunch of bad news came out on MMOs this week, and Brian and I could not be more stoked for MMOs. The health of MMOs has never looked better, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Because we knew that ABK was sick. But all of these actions tell me that they know. And if I had a friend whose life was falling down around them, and then I went out to dinner with them and they said, "Yeah, my life's going great, man. It's really good. I've never been better," I would be more concerned for them. But if they said, "You know, I actually need to come clean about some other things that aren't going well. I really need your help right now," that tells me they're aware of it. Now, would I rather my friend just have had their life together in the first place?
Yeah.
Sure. That's not what happened. And so from this point forward, like, ABK coming out and saying, "Hey, we're going to need a minute." Good. That's what I need to hear from you. I need to know that you take this seriously. So we'll wait to see how the legal battles shake out. We'll wait to see how the leadership changes shake out, how the new culture forms. Do they get content coming out again? Because unfortunately, I will say that Blizzard failing would look identical to this. Mm-hmm. So they're either on the path to Blizzard closing its doors, or they're on the path to 2.0. Those are where I see them going. I don't see this as status quo, which was my concern. A company with this many resources, we are conditioned in a capitalist society to hear, oh, they got accused of something, they'll pay a fine, and they'll keep doing the behavior. This tells me that is no longer the option. The option is to get better or to shut it down. And that excites me because that leaves get better on the table.
Yeah. And that's what we were hoping for. We were always hoping for that, despite how people feel. Cause I'm less of the dog, have the dog in the fight. Chris quit WoW. And I don't know how to explain to you how monumentous that is. Like, it isn't words. It isn't platitudes. You guys don't know Chris for World of Warcraft, but he is one of the most knowledgeable people that I know about the game itself. And the fact is, it's just, it is what it is. So hopefully we're, like I said, with all of this stuff, like, clean up all the gunk, put light as the best to disinfect it. And from here, I would love to see, I personally, and when we talked about this privately, I go, like, even back in the summer, I go, what I want to see is what would be the equivalent of WoW 2 or WoW Reborn, because it came out in 2004. That's almost 20 years. Like, how do you go and bring, and then I was like,
it could take so long that it stays on alternate levels with Final Fantasy. It could come out midway through 7.0. It could still alternate.
These things take obviously a lot of time. Anyway, guys, let us know what you guys are thinking. Anything at all in the comments below. I'm gonna let Chris go back to his live stream. I just was wanting to jump in and interrupt him for this conversation. Good. And guys, thanks for watching. Chris, why don't you take us out?
Guys, we asked for them to listen to us. We asked for them to know that what they had done was wrong and be on the path to a better ABK. That was never going to be a smooth process. That was always going to have pain along the way. as we let all this stuff come out into the light and let the light be the best disinfectant. And so we might have a better ABK, and that is good for all MMO players, including Final Fantasy players. But of course, we are going into an incredible end to the year for Final Fantasy. So be here, hang out with us. We are looking forward to sharing that journey with you. November 19th is right around the corner. Until then, take care.